amazing, but no pressure.
Yeah.
And we're live. We're live.
I'm following you.
We're live. Episode 13, Toque Talk, in its 13th week.
13.
Lucky 13. Lucky 13.
I'm supposed to skip 13 like they do in the elevators. On the
This
floors?
is episode
Well,
14. We're on episode 14 now.
We didn't get that memo, but our budget was cut this week. Unfortunately, Brent couldn't afford to pay his cable bill, so he's joining me live in the studio today. So
Is he essentially calling squatters' rights now in your house?
Now he's living in your basement.
that's right. Yeah, he's moving basement to basement area.
So now we've narrowed it down to 2 guys in LA, 2 guys in Winnipeg, and I'm in Vegas still. So it's like 3 locations. But,
Absolutely.
But it's summer everywhere. It's hot everywhere. It's hot in Winnipeg, I understand.
It is. It's hot, but again, like we talked earlier, we don't complain about that here because we know what the alternative is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. You deal with the extremes on both ends, don't you?
Let's compare
Exactly.
temperatures. What's the temperature there?
Well, when they say with Humidex, I bet you it probably feels like plus 40 here today. I mean, Celsius.
Oh no, Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit. I don't know. Do the math on that. I don't know.
I think I went. It's 101 here, whatever that is in Celsius.
Dang. But it's black.
What is? How do you do the conversion to Celsius to Fahrenheit?
36. I don't know. I just know that anything over 110 is ridic, right? Like,
Yes.
and it's that every day in Vegas right now, right, Todd?
Well, today the high is 106. So there you go.
Okay.
It's like
Wow.
it's like living on the surface of the sun. I always say.
Yeah, and it's worse because it's at night 100.
Dude, it's like it's the weirdest thing when you go out at
Yeah,
night.
that's the thing.
How is it still hot out here, young?
It doesn't cool down at night.
No.
In LA, we can just open a window and it cools down to like 68 or whatever in the summertime, which is great.
Yeah.
Wow. Do
That's the coast.
you just run AC all year, or what do you?
In
Almost.
Vegas?
No, it's cold in wintertime. People forget that it's the desert. So, right, Todd, it's always people from, of course, Canada come down there and think it's balmy, but we're all like mitts and jackets around December going, hey man, it's like winter.
See, we're all complaining about the heat, but Marlene online is saying, "Wow, send the sun my way because it's cold in the Netherlands." So
Oh.
Sure.
we all have something to complain about, but I mean, you know.
No, I know. Exactly, yeah.
Isn't
And
it winter
so-
in Australia too? Right? Isn't it opposite,
I
guys?
would imagine
winter,
winter in
yeah.
Australia is probably fairly survivable compared to Winnipeg.
And then Sherry says it's the same. 40 Fahrenheit is 40 Celsius. Is that like that? I don't know. I mean, there's got to.
No, that's minus 40 is the same.
Is that fake news?
Fake news.
That's like
Well,
fake.
it's not entirely fake. You just forgot to say minus. Minus 40 is the same in Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Gotcha.
Okay.
40 degrees is like over 100, I think. Isn't it, boys?
Well, it's 40 below. What I don't give
Don't
up.
give up.
Yeah.
Degrees in my hometown and raining in Innisfail, which is kind of chilly, right?
Yeah. It's nice.
Oh, and
Last
then
night-
Andrew
last
White
night-
put up some sort of formula that I guess I don't know,
Oh boy.
whatever that
Pi.
it just basically says I never had a girlfriend. This is what I know. 0 degrees times 9 over 5 plus 32. There you go. That's some real nerd. That's some real nerd stuff there, Andrew.
We learned that at some point when we converted to the metric system back. What year was that?
Yeah. Probably in the 70s, right? Late 70s, because
78, 79, something like that?
82
it's amazing
Fahrenheit
that-
is
that
28.
The US hasn't done that yet. I mean,
It never is.
seriously, you can't do kilometers? It makes so much more sense.
How
So,
about
like-
okay?
And inches, like eighths and sixteenths and 30 seconds of inches. How hard is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Canada's weird though because we don't. I mean, I always measure in inches. I mean, if everybody, somebody says it's 102 centimeters, I'm like, well, how much is that? Like,
Or weigh yourself.
Or
you
weigh-
never say your kilograms. Or
yeah,
whatever. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
When you're in Europe, a guy will say he's 100 and whatever centimeters tall, and you'll
Yeah.
be like, you don't really think about that. We always talk. Canadians live in a sort of hybrid of the metric system and the imperial system. That we still talk about miles sometimes too. Like I'll still go like, oh yeah. But down here it's straight up. And some places, I think in the UK, in some instances they have still like talking miles or not. They do weigh in stones, so that's a whole lot.
Yeah.
She weighed 16 stone.
Every stone weighs the same, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's funny how things have kept the same though, because have you ever tried to buy a flashlight and it says like it's like 1,000,000 candles, and I'm thinking like, how are we still going to compare to the most prehistoric
That's
form
kind
of
like,
light?
that's kind of like the parallel of horsepower, I suppose.
I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we always have good, interesting topics here on Toque Talk. So
Well, that's it for me.
tune in next week. Our guest will be Bill Nye, the science guy.
Look who's here. Look who's here.
Look who's here, my coney.
Ah.
Thank you.
This is Rio, the coney.
The coney.
Oh, what happened?
What happened?
Well, he was neutered, so.
Hi, guy.
Poor little guy.
He's a rescue, right?
Yeah, he's a
He's a
rescue.
rescue.
He's a rescue.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's just 5.5 months. Yeah.
Oh, wow. He's wee.
He's a baby.
Yeah. So he's the troublemaker around here. Yeah.
I like it. We got to get a troublemaker around here.
Don't you have one? Aren't you married?
Yes, I'm the troublemaker.
Yeah.
That's the
You've looked
problem.
after my dogs many times. You
I've
guys
looked
are
after
great
four
dog
dogs.
parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we take good care of those dogs. We spoil them rotten.
And you've stayed at my house too, Todd. My dogs love you. You and Monique
Yeah.
are the best dog sitters.
I don't know why. It's a natural energy, I suppose. When but yeah, I haven't met a lot of the new Fitz dogs though. There's a whole new tribe of Fitz dogs.
Who are rescues as well. I think
Yes.
Chrissy keeps threatening to come over to your house with our dogs because we did that one day, but I don't think you and I were on. We were on the road. I think Chrissy and Monique brought all the dogs over to your house, and it was
Yeah.
like mayhem or something, from what I heard.
You had the Sherco's dogs and the Fitz dogs.
Yeah.
There you go.
Corey, I just saw your birthday video, by the way. Darren just showed it to me, and the ending sequence was the best thing ever. The two dogs in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't see
So good.
Have you
You
posted
gotta
that
post
online?
What's that?
Have you posted it anywhere? Because Star Wars fans have to see that.
There's a private link, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You should get a screenshot or something. Of
You
those
got to
two.
put at least a screenshot on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey Corey, I checked out your Devil Went Down to Georgia clip.
Yeah?
Badass.
We were there that night. Didn't you watch it live at that?
Thanks,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
I figured it was a good time to put it out since Charlie Daniels died yesterday.
Yeah, that was tragic.
Yeah, and I made a lot of money with that song, or not a lot of money, but enough to keep me alive when I was busking in Vancouver. Right,
Right.
That was one of my big songs. I
That's
played
right.
that
Yeah.
I've always felt
5
it.
times a day for different audiences, and people would throw me money.
I think it's
There you go.
the defining fiddle song. If you can cut the mustard
Yeah.
on that, then right.
It's the eruption of the fiddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, the actual recording has a lot of double fiddle parts for the devil part. So
Yeah.
it's pretty hard to mimic it completely. You just kind of have to shake your hand as quick as you can.
Right.
That's amazing. So, but not only we celebrate Charlie's passing, and then today is Ringo Starr's 80th birthday.
Right.
That is
Holy.
so
That's
mind
amazing.
blowing. And he had dates like the.
That's loud.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to. We're having some audio. Some people are saying they can't hear you guys because what we're trying to do is prevent an audio loop happening here. So,
It's interesting being here in the cockpit of Toque Talk. Darren's got a lot of cool stuff going on here that I had no idea. It's pretty impressive.
but I guess before we
I really like his custom Tim Hortons coffee machine in the house here.
and your custom coaster, we shouldn't waste any more time figuring this.
Okay.
We should introduce our guest.
It's so funny because Prism's name has come up so many times when we talk about like Bruce Fairbairn and all those guys in the early days. A lot of those bands use Prism as their frame of reference in finding Bruce Fairbairn. So I think that's really quite telling. It's a long, long story. The band has a million hits. They were gods to us, and we're really thrilled to have them. Ladies and gentlemen, Al Harlow from Prism.
Yeah.
And still playing.
I can't follow that intro. You're too kind.
Well, it's true. We were talking to. I've been talking to people recently, and a lot of that sort of conversation about like Bon Jovi and bands like that who found Bruce Fairbairn. Yeah. Apparently, a lot of them were well versed in things like Prism, Loverboy, all the things that Bruce had sort of worked on. You know what I mean? So it really kind of was the stuff that led to him going on to doing that whole other level of an American and international type stuff. But you know, there's a lot to be said about.
Just 1 second, try this.
Project at that moment, and all of a sudden we realized this thing actually has a future. But the previous singer was a guy named Jeff Eddington, and so when the band played Expo in Montreal, he was doing this fake French, and people were throwing rotten tomatoes and all this kind of stuff. And I think there was some kind of a song contest in Calgary, you know, where each band gets up and does their little contest song. And I think the Seat of Time chose to play the Velvet Underground's Heroin for that. That got kicked out of the contest. And so we had to change the name.
Oh, wow. Man. I love how challenging you guys were. Ambitious and, like, in your face. I appreciate that.
Challenging? Is that the word? I can write that down. We were challenged.
Or challenged. That seems like a, you know, doing. I mean, we all know how, you know, doing a bad French impressions doesn't go over very well in French-speaking areas.
No, I don't recommend that in Quebec City. No.
Yeah.
Apparently, Toque isn't even Toque in Quebec. It's Toque, right?
Toque.
Yeah.
We'll phone them and find out.
Yeah. That's what our friend Benoit Bordeaux told us.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, with a name like Benoit Bordeaux, you trust what he says about French.
Knows what he's talking about.
Very true.
When you became involved with the guys, is it when Ron joined that it became more what we kind of know Prism to be?
Yeah. I know there's a lot. There's still some stuff lingering on the web as to, you know, who did what to who when. But we were splintering it. So we had to sort of leave the heroin habit behind and figure out that maybe we got a few more years left. We should get serious about this thing. And so Lindsay Mitchell and Jim Bowles and Bruce Fairbairn went into the studio. That's what happened. So that wasn't officially the Seat of Time. And I was right next door in the next studio, trying to be Al Harlow over there. And we were at various times we were all roommates. So I look upon it as more a community than a band. And Jim was writing these cool songs: Open Soul Surgery, Spaceship Superstar. These were the demos, you know. And all of a sudden we realized this thing's going to go somewhere. And so everybody in the room looked around and said, "Well, now we've got to become a band." And so at that point, I think Rocket Norton was coming in on drums and John Hall was on keyboards. Now, the funniest thing was, once in a while, we still get together and just do little shows around Vancouver for fun. And somebody in the audience yelled out, they said, "Okay, how come Ab Bryant's Headpins and Chilliwack, Ab Bryant's photograph is on the back of the first Prism album, and he doesn't play on that album. He doesn't play a note. And on the second album, See Forever Eyes, there's no mention of him, and he's essentially the bass player, and I'm one of the guitar players." So it was kind of like, I think Little Feat used to do this. They used to make very confusing album liner notes, and they'd put song titles that are on the previous or the next album. So that created a lot of confusion, which we're happy to live with. But what really happened was we just sort of reformed as a Seat of Time, because little group of studio songs had to become a band. Really, we accidentally got a record deal.
That's so cool, though. that communal idea, almost like that. The band name escapes me now, but there's a lot of these bands that kind of they put together a much larger group made of other, like, just a bunch of different guys getting together, and it's sort of at some point, obviously, you guys were streamlined into an actual working lineup. I mean, Jim and even Bruce, I think, was sort of a musician involved in horns and stuff at that point, wasn't he?
Last night, I saw something that somebody posted on the Facebook Prism fan page, whatever it was, and I had never really seen a picture of the band on stage, and heaven knows we were in Atlanta or somewhere like that. And here's the whole horn section behind us that we actually
wow.
took. So, and there's Fairburn, second from the right on trumpet, yeah.
Wow, that's so crazy. Are we okay audio-wise, Darren, before we go any further? Do we need to reboot or anything, or are you cool?
Can you hear it, Darren? Hello?
Yeah, I'm on the delay.
Darren, can you hear us?
Oh, okay.
I wanted to ask Al, because it seems like the studio and all studios in Vancouver have some sort of magic mojo, and there's been so many good songs, written in Vancouver. And so where was all this magic happening in those days? Like, what studio or studios?
Yes, you're right. Well, yeah, there was Mushroom Studios.
What was it called? Mushroom? Sorry. It had another name.
Yeah, Canbase?
Canbase.
That's it.
Yeah, and my goodness, yeah, who didn't record there? I mean, speaking of Ringo and Led Zeppelin, when they were in town, they would go there and record.
Wow.
And then when Bruce Fairburn when his phoenix began to rise, he moved over to Little Mountain Studios,
right,
which is about 10 blocks away, and so that's when he brought everybody into Vancouver. So Fairburn got to the point where he said, well, why should I travel to New York and LA to make records? Let's just have Aerosmith and Bon Jovi and Bob Clearmountain come over here. And so all of a sudden we were like this destination city, but but everybody recorded there, and let's just have Aerosmith and Bon Jovi and Bob Clearmountain.
But it's fascinating to see that you're. Let's go back, because what I'm really curious about is, like, so where did you grow up personally? Like, did you grow up in Vancouver properly, or did you grow up?
Lindsay Mitchell and I grew up in North Vancouver.
Okay, North Vancouver.
And then
you guys knew each other as kids?
From about age 15 or something. And
oh wow!
And I had my little band of ruffians. We used to smash windows and hop freight trains on the waterfront. We decided to be a rock band. And it was right around then that I met Lindsay. And so at that time, I think the very first Fleetwood Mac was coming into vogue, and we were learning about who Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf were. So we had this little dual guitar thing going. We two rhythm guitar players making a big mess.
Amazing.
Wow.
And then you've always had sort of more of like when I look back at the old footage, even like the Al Harlow stuff, you look the same then as you are now, like this sort of cool ass mod Britpop kind of vibe the whole time you carried through. And I think that really carried like a lot of weight. I'm so jealous of anybody who was of the age where they saw that Beatles on Ed Sullivan and that was like the thing, because that's always the story you hear. But for we were like a generation later where that already existed. For us, it was like we saw Kiss on TV or something.
For sure.
But I mean, I'm always fascinated by the idea of just kind of like everybody suddenly has a band. Everybody's got a guitar. Everybody, everybody just gets this fever, and we all got to put a band together. That's so exciting to me. I'm
glad you said that, because it affects you in some deep place. Like I thought that having a band was like oxygen, that was the unit of survival. Like you couldn't walk down the street and not have a band. You'd have a nervous breakdown, But yeah, I mean, not only did everybody in my generation tune in that night in February '64 to watch the Beatles, but if you were really hip and really cool, you already had the 45s,
Sure,
And I still have my ticket stub. I should go get it here. For $2.50, we saw the Beatles in Vancouver at Empire Stadium.
Oh, wow.
And the Stones appeared in town twice within 6 months of that. And I think each show, I think the most I paid for either of those three shows was like $3,
Isn't that amazing?
It was just mad. And so, yeah, I mean, before that, of course, it was the solo guy, it was Elvis and nobody knew who Scotty Moore was on guitar, you know?
No.
Or it was Chuck Berry and nobody knew that was Johnny Johnson on piano, you know?
Sure.
But then when the Beatles hit, of course, the rules changed. And, you know, everybody cared that George Harrison did a solo and, you know, and the girls would scream when the camera went to Ringo on the drums. Well, that was the game changer. I mean, that blew the door open for Keith Moon and Stones and Kiss and everybody that followed. So we were just fortunate enough to be right there, right at that moment, and we all got the same disease.
And I'm super jealous of that. Like, I mean, it was just always there, because by the time we started playing music, I think the Beatles had a different effect on me, where I almost looked at them like, I can't do that. Those guys are from like Valhalla or something. They seemed like they were from another planet. They seemed like a four-headed monster that just was perfection, you know what I mean? So we found punk rock and stuff like that because, well, I could play those three chords. You know, the Who had more of an effect on me in that way because it just felt like something I could actually do. The Beatles just seemed like, that seems too hard. So when you guys eventually put together the actual Prism band, you move over to bass. Now, was the transition to bass, was that more like, because I know you were always sort of credited as bass and guitar. So I was always, and slide guitar a lot too, right?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah.
So it was always very confusing. I go, so is Al the bass player, or is he because I know Lindsay was obviously the primary guitar player that way, but you just kind of moved over to bass.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I actually didn't. I played about maybe 70% bass at any given time, and now all the posting pictures appear, you know, gigs that you forgot you did, you know, like where are we there, you know, in Louisiana or something like Estonville, Saskatchewan, you know, and all the photos that are appearing now, and you know what this is like. You see pictures of yourself, and it's always Lindsay and me side by side on Telecasters or, you know, something like that. And I can tell by where the fingers are. I can tell what we're doing. You know, oh, I know. We're doing the little duet solo in "Take Me Away" right there. You know, or something like that, right? But all the photos, there's no photos of me on bass. And our keyboard guy, John Hall, had the little micro move. So I'd jump away from bass, play guitar for 4 or 5 songs or slide or whatever, and as he said, here's our bass player right here. So I was really a guitar. I've actually played more guitar on Prism records than I have bass. Ab Bryant played a lot of bass on it.
So you're almost like the Paul McCartney type skill of being able to, like, you play guitar, and when there was suddenly needed a bass player, you just went over to the bass.
Yes, it's the Ronnie Wood syndrome.
100%.
With Jeff Beck, right?
100%. Yeah. We'll accept both of those references because those are good.
It's my reference as well. Man, we can fire them off the back wall.
Exactly. Yeah. It's my references as well because I'm a guitar player who plays bass and a bass player who plays guitar and sometimes sings and can dance and juggle and breathe fire. No, I can't do any of those things. But it's kind of the idea.
You're a song and dance man.
Exactly. That's what we call it now. But go ahead. Somebody else.
Shane, you said that Prism was a very big band for you growing up in your career.
So I'm interested to know if you remember a tour or a few tours you did called Freeze Your Ass Off.
Oh, yeah.
I guess that was just kind of a generic name for the tour.
Yeah, I think there was 2, and those were the cross-country Canadian tours of the day. I still have the T-shirt.
I was trying to find my T-shirt because I had Freeze Your Ass Off. I think it was 79 at the Kins Field House in Edmonton.
Oh, my goodness, you were there?
I was there.
Can you imagine how edgy that T-shirt was back then, wearing "Freeze Your Ass Off" to school the next day?
Dude, when I wore that to school, it was like "Freeze Your Ass Off." It was One Horse Blue was the opening act.
One Horse Blue.
I'm pretty sure it was 79. I'm just wondering, would you remember that tour? That it seemed like such a magical time. I was so young and impressionable, and going to this. I was from a very small town.
Al, he's essentially saying it's Al's fault that he followed this path to play music. So
I think we can both get counseling for that now. But
anyway, it was magic for me.
Well, thank you for remembering. Yeah, man. But and now I call it the Too Dumb to Quit tour. Well, not that over touring is a problem in the current COVID pandemic, but I think it we were all in a room. We said, well, what should we call this tour? You know, and of course we're so dumb. We're heading out in the middle of winter across the prairies. You know, freeze your ass off, buddy.
Yeah.
But now that's actually industry standard. Touring Canada in the winter is the time to tour. We tour in the summertime, which I always find kind of amazing, is that you're actually dealing with. We've got some kind of help.
The internet.
We're back.
Oh no, Darren, help! Am I still here?
Everybody's back now for me.
We're back.
You guys
I
hear
see
it?
is.
Check 1, 2.
There we are.
You get a glitch?
Here we are.
Yay!
No, I was saying in Canada, it's like you compete with like cottage season in the summer.
That's
So
correct.
now touring in the winter, you have a captive audience, you know, and they're so happy. We're all so happy to get out and see a concert rather than staying inside freezing your butt off. Yeah, so freezing your ass off. I'm sorry. Freezing your ass off.
Yeah, I heard that as you just said, I heard that some kids got kicked out of school the next day for wearing that shirt. You know.
Now that's rock and roll.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys, when you were touring in the winter in Canada, did you ever like get your hand stuck to the microphone stand when you were bringing it into the club? So
Ew.
cold, like sticking.
Oh
your
my
tongue to,
goodness. Well, fortunately, by that time we had the crew and stuff. We just run to the hotel. Well, I remember we toured. We played. I think it was that big square-roomed convention center in Winnipeg. And there's a walkway to the hotel, like an overhead walkway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Glass thing. And so the security guys had said, okay, well, after the show and all this and that, and you can get back to your hotel by going over this walkway. Well, no, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and the union guys had all gone home, and all the doors were locked. So nobody had a jacket or anything. We thought we were going to stay indoors, right? And I remember Rocket and I had to leave out the door of the convention center, drenched in sweat, right, with a towel.
Oh, no, yeah.
And start running around the block in Winnipeg in like November, looking for the front door of the hotel across the street. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
Oh man, that's terrible.
Speaking of Rocket, what is he doing these days?
Well, good old Rocket. We talked. We just talked yesterday, and he is now. And I know this is the latest news. This is Rocket this week. He's composing a drum sonata, like a big jazz drum thing.
Wow.
And he's making a video of it. And he told me, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind my saying this, he said for the first time in his life he's now taking drum lessons. And
Wow.
he's now holding the stick correctly, you know, like military
Sure,
style.
yeah, yeah.
And he said and so he's laughing. He says, "I'm learning to play the drums." So what a guy!
Fitz, you remember Mirror Man?
Yes.
So, did you ever see Prism live? When they do like Mirror Man, there would be a big drum solo.
Oh yeah.
That was Rocket's big moment.
drum solo
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a little bit like Peter Chris's solo, and it was a triplety thing. But he shredded on it, man.
Yeah.
And like I remember during that time, like seeing that live, it really made a huge impact on me.
Well, he was no joke. Gong, he had the gong and like a lot of toms.
Slamming.
Yeah.
He was like, it wasn't like he played like this. He was like live. It was like big motions, you know.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
So fun to watch.
Yeah. The key to him is his two favorite drummers are Charlie Watts and Keith Moon.
Sure.
So there's a hybrid.
But he had a lot of power too, like in his backbeat. I remember his backbeat was really fat. And I always loved that. Kind of like Bonham, like just had that thing.
Yeah, he's still got it. He's in shape, man. He works out every day. Like, what a guy.
That's amazing. Good for him. Again, like, you know, seeing Ringo and all that, it makes you realize that, you know, you can keep doing this as long as you take care of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, Lord willing, huh? Take your vitamins and get some sleep. But how old is Tony Bennett now? 95?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And he's still going.
He's on the road. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still going. Yeah, God bless him. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of fitness regimen or anything like that, or diet, or anything?
Yeah, how do you look so young?
Well, there's this painting up in the attic of this wretched old man who's just rotting away.
Yeah.
Well, 1 foot out of the bed. Yeah, I just get up in the morning and I just thank the good Lord and take the vitamins. But up here on the coast, I mean, I like to bicycle, cycle the trails and do all that kind of stuff. And we got a pool over here, so I swim laps every day and stuff like that. So, yeah, just keep doing it, man. You use it or lose it, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Stay active.
So, the big secret weapons in an equation like Prism, where you've got guys like Jim Vallance. For those that don't know, Jim Vallance is basically the other half of all those Bryan Adams hits for years and years and years and years and years, and a bunch of other hit songs as well. So yeah. Jim was originally the drummer, I know he was a drummer, but he was originally the drummer for Prism. Am I right on that?
Yeah, multi-instrumentalist, but he did play drums on the first album for, I think, most of it, yeah.
But he under a different name, like an alias name.
Rodney Higgs.
Yeah.
Rodney Higgs.
and the backstory behind that was, because he was in the music, like back in those days, there was no rock school, you know what I mean? There was this kind of stuff, which I slummed it for a while. I was teaching the rock and roll college over at Capilano University here for a while. But back in the days when Jim was in school, it was strictly conservatory, like classical training, right? And so when he started doing sessions and writing and all this kind of stuff, he didn't want his friends at UBC to know that he was doing this rock and roll thing on the other side of town. So for his nom de plume on the first Prism album was Rodney Higgs. So if the whole thing went down the toilet, then he would have nothing to lose. Like, that wasn't me. And of course,
amazing.
Yeah, he ended up with a big problem because now he had to change his name back again. Yeah, so we still laugh about that. What a guy.
That's amazing.
That's pretty funny.
And then you got Bruce Fairburn, who's also involved in the band, but just happens to be. Was Bruce already like an established production guy at this point, or was this more like his fledgling early days of like, hey, I'll record the band, or how did that all come together?
More the latter, what you just said. So, just like all of us here talking today, we picked up guitars when we were little kids, and we all had bands around town, kind of toured regionally and did all that. So Bruce Fairburn was the trumpet player in a band called Sunshine, and they were cool because they were essentially a jazz band, but to get regular steady paying gigs, they do a bit of rock and Dixieland and big band swing and all that kind of stuff. But he had a day job. He worked for BC Hydro, the power supply.
Sure, yeah.
And so when this Prism thing came along, with Jim Valance's songs, they took the paycheck from the last gig that Sunshine did, because they knew the band was breaking up, and they went into, I guess, Mushroom Studios with this little budget to make a demo.
Huh.
And some of the tracks on that first demo ended up being the tracks on the first Prism album. So someone said, well, who's producing this thing? And Bruce said, me. So, he didn't have, he probably had fewer flying hours in the studio at that point than the rest of us ragamuffins, but he was a very quick learner.
Well, clearly he had a penchant for it, because it's went on to make massively successful records. So when you guys, so there's a whole period where, like we were just talking before we went into this about that era with Ron as the lead singer, is actually a fairly small window of time, which seems like sort of in a lot of ways this sort of quintessential lineup to some degree before Ron's passing and all that. Yeah. And then Henry comes involved. When did you step out for a while? Was there a period where you stepped out at any point? And then I know you obviously came back. Now you're the lone guy waving the flag. So that's really
the Lone Ranger. Yeah,
exactly.
The people either passed away or drifted away. Yeah, or they're just too old to do it.
Yeah, well that's
not me.
Yeah, exactly. Nope.
Well, yeah, and I kind of inherited it by default, and now now the guys in the band they've been with me for like 15 years, and they're monster players. So I keep saying to the new guys, like, why do you bother with me? It's just the same 3 chords. And they say, no, we get it. But to go back to what you're referring to here, what was the question again? Yeah, how did it?
Henry came in at some point, which Henry Small came in, and then it eventually sort of phased its own self out, as bands just sort of do. But and then did you go back to being the Al Harlow group at any point?
Yes, I did.
I remember the Al Harlow band being around.
Yeah. And, wow. Are you that old?
Hey man, It's all smoke and mirrors going on. I'm actually like, this is a CGI image, and there's an old guy over in the corner just.
That's my trick.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, you're right. There were a couple of little windows in there. So it's, I don't know, are we talking about me here? But right now, just in time for the pandemic, like, I mean, we've all heard the legends that the Beatles recorded their first album in 4 days, you know, the Rolling Stones did their first album in 4 or 5 days, you know, first take, live off the floor, all this stuff. And now, of course, I think, was it Bruce Springsteen was the first guy to take 3 years to do an album, you know. So I just finished 3.5 years, and I got the brand new Al Harlow album sitting right here, right, my invisible friend right here. And we're ready to launch it. So now we're scratching our heads and saying, well, how do you do that in a meaningful way? So, okay, one single at a time, donate it to charity, you know, make the home video, you know, all the stuff that we're talking about now. But I also have, just in time for Christmas, 2023, you know, by the time we get there, right? So like everybody else my age, I've got the autobiography book ready to go. I've got the brand new album ready to go. And I've got the archival album, like my own studio stuff at Mushroom and Little Mountain from the Harlow days, all remastered and ready to go. And that album contains, like, I guess you'd call them the 16-track demo versions of the songs that Bruce Fairbairn. The reason I joined Prism was because we had to be the seat of time again. But also Bruce says, here you got some songs, Al. Why don't you come over to my house, you know? So my songs, Take Me Away and Flying and Nickels and Dimes and all those songs, I've got the original versions of that on my archival albums. So I want to package all this stuff this year, you know, and kind of get it out there somehow, and just, you know, a free T-shirt and a free balloon, and away we go, you know. So I'm kind of trying to get the old brand, but I want to reflect back on what you said, because it was so astute. It's like the things that you think about all the time, and you think that nobody else is thinking about this. But you know, again, back to the days when it was Chuck Berry and Elvis and Little Richard and Eddie Cochran, all these guys, right? And then the Beatles turned it into the band. Like it was John Entwistle and Keith Moon. It was Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts. You cared about every guy now. And there's now 4 and 5 guys in the photo instead of just one guy, you know.
Right.
And so I just live my life by those rules. And then all of a sudden, I mean, of course, we've had Bryan Adams and Elton John and David Bowie since. So I feel as though I've kind of come out the other side now. You know, I work with great guys, a number of great drummers. You know what it's like. Like you're back to being like a community again. So where am I going with this? I'm completely lost now. But I feel more that way now. Like I know that with Prism, we're all, you know, we've got a lot of enthusiasm to go back in the studio and do something this year. Heaven knows we've got a lot of free time to do it. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to prove to the world that this Al Harlow guy was always there, and we're still doing it.
No, and I think that's awesome, because it's like, it must be such a joy for you to get up there and you know, celebrate the history of the band, the whole catalog, and be able to be the one translating the entire thing as the mayor of Prism Town, if you want to.
The curator of the museum.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, like getting to sing songs. You know, you're getting to kind of retell these stories that you've been telling for, you know, many years, but now you get to do it your way and with as much faith and love for the music and for the band and the name and the history. It's great to see that you're doing that, and it's too easy to let these things just kind of fade away. You know, it's like somebody should be out there celebrating the music, and I'm glad you are.
Well, thank you for saying so. Yeah, and even during the Henry Small phase, you know, there was some good stuff done in there, and I do feel like a steward, you know, because again, I didn't grab it and run with it, but I was kind of left with it. You know, as you say, I did become the caretaker, and there was a moment when I was going to walk away from it. You know, it was chapter 2. You know, we went through the '90s and re-signed with an indie label, and, you know, did an album back at that. So I call it the black and chrome rock club phase that we all did, you know.
Right.
And then, of course, it turned into casino theaters and the big summer rock festivals, which is hopefully what Well, that's what it was up to 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so it refuses to die. Like, it just won't go away. Like George Burns said, hang around long enough and they'll build a theater around you, you know. So it wasn't like, okay, you know, Al needs to do this. His ego and his bank account demand it. It wasn't like that. But the guys just kind of, you know, our agent Bernie Aubin of the Headpins, and the guys who were in the band, and even Rocket, they just said, you know, Al, you got to keep it going, man. Like, and so I just try to be faithful to the essence of what it is, but we stretch every night, you know. We jam, you know. We're not just locked into sounding like the record, you know.
No.
But everybody involved understands, you know. Like, so it, like, don't shred, don't flash out. It's blues based, R&B based stuff. Like, here's what it is down in the basement. Here's what the essence of it is. So, for example, my drummer Gary Grace, I mean, he does clinics. He can shred. He does jazz. He does all that kind of stuff. Sure. But when he gets behind the kit in Prism, it's 4 on the floor, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, the one thing I'm really curious about is because I think you and I share a very similar taste in the actual guitars. I always look at footage and I go, he's playing a Firebird, or an old one you're playing the non-reverse Firebird, a Teardrop Vox. Like, these are guitars that like I've always had a real thing for the radical guitars, you know, the ones that are real showy and real. Like, I've got a house full of, I've got a Teardrop, I got the non-reverse there, I got a reverse Flying V's and Icemans and all. I've always kind of like, you know, and I designed my own signature one. I'm going to get you a signature one. I think it'll look good on you, Al.
Oh my goodness! Hey, I'll be right over. Hey, yeah, Are you sure we're not related? Was there a mistake in the maternity ward? My brother.
Connected by guitars, exactly.
Yes.
No, but it's one of those things that whenever I see like Billy Gibbons, I remember a friend of mine told me Billy Gibbons. They opened. They were in a band called the Monoxides from back east, like That's Halifax area in Canada. They were opening for ZZ Top, and he was playing an Explorer or a Flying V. My friend was Derek, the guitar player, and I guess Billy Gibbons went up and he said, "Keep playing those things, man," you know, because Billy loves those. Rick Nielsen, those kind of guys, they just have this thing for kind of unconventional. You know, there's really a Firebird's not necessarily unconventional, but it still is the radical of the radical. At the time, those guitars would have been like, "What the hell is that?" You know,
yes, indeed.
And I definitely connect with you on that whenever I see you're playing something. I go, where the hell did you get a teardrop from? That's great, you know.
Oh yeah, there's mojo in those guitars. There really is. There's magic, and I know everybody gets up with a Strat, and well, you know, a Les Paul. We all have those guitars too. But yeah, can I tell you how I got the teardrop?
Please.
I had several of them, real genuine Vox Mark IIIs, slipped through my fingers. And I didn't really go for the latter ones that had too many volume controls and a Bigsby and 4 pickups and all. I wanted the Brian Jones one. 2 pickups, 1 volume, 1 tone, plug it in, and that's... So when Korg took over Vox, they created a custom shop. And a couple of times they've done limited runs, you know, and charged way too much money for them, and they're number stamped and all that kind of stuff. But they did a little run in 1998. And so I was looking around for like 20 years, and I found this one in a pawn shop online in South Los Angeles.
Wow.
And I phoned the guy. Like, the next morning I phoned him, and of course I'm just babbling like a fool, you know. I'm saying, oh, you know, Canada, Brian Jones fan, Prism. You know, and the guy says, I understand what you're saying. Calm down. It's yours. It's yours. And the funniest thing was, well, there is a story behind this. You know, every guitar has a story. So he said, well, he says, I'm just a pawn shop. He says, I know what this guitar is, and I understand that I'm waiting for a guy like you. I'm not just going to sell it to some guy down the street who has a surf punk band and, you know, is going to trash this thing. He says, okay, so it's yours. I'll put it in the back room. He says, but I can't sell to Canadians. I can't ship it. I can't do anything. I'm just a pawn shop on the corner. So he says, we got to figure this out. So I phoned one of my best friends, whom I had a long phone call with last night. But do you remember the band, the English band Ultravox? Remember those guys?
Yeah.
Warren Cann was the drummer of Ultravox. And they were involved in that new romantic movement and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, Warren lives in in L.A. now for the last 20 years. And
well,
he's
now you know 2 other guys in L.A. These other 2 could have ran down to the pawn shop for you.
Yeah. Now we can get together and do lunch, all of us. So,
exactly.
So anyway, I called Warren and said, Warren, can you take this much money over to this guy? And he says, yeah, I'll go get your guitar for you. So anyway, I phoned the pawn shop guy back, and I could see in the background he had a TV screen going, and it was like a documentary on World War II. You know, I said, well, I'm going to send a friend of mine in to get the guitar. His name is Warren Can, and the guy's jaw dropped. He says, Warren Can
from
Ultravox? Yeah, yeah. He'll be down tomorrow. He'll have the money, and it goes. Amazing. Warren Can is going to be in my pawn shop, and so they're both military buffs. So apparently Warren was there for like 3 hours, and the price of the guitar came down.
Nice.
But then we still couldn't get it back to Canada. So anyway, Warren shipped it up to Bellingham, just south, which is just south of on the border in Vancouver. Yeah, and Mark Stadnick, who, as a rock star, his name was Lance Question, and he was Bryan Adams' guitar tech for about 15, maybe 20 years. Sure. And he has an office just inside the U.S. border because the guys would leave a lot of their gear there and just, not bring it back and forth across the border, right?
Sure,
so this is why I shouldn't say this out loud live on it. That's where they stash all their gear. So he said, how do you want to do this? Honest? And I said, well, yeah, I'll pay dude. He says, you know what? He says, just let me do this. So I said, okay, whatever you're going to do, go ahead and do it. So they had this little system. And so when I met him in a parking lot of a White Spot restaurant here on Southwest Marine Drive, where he's passing me the guitar out of the trunk of his car, right? And so I opened up
a drug deal.
So yes, so the guitar case is covered in Vancouver Canucks stickers, and there's like Long and McQuaid price tags hanging off it, and you open the case. And again, there's like a Long and McQuaid guitar strap and strings and receipts from Vancouver, all this stuff, right? So of course, this is the first time this guitar's ever been in Canada, right? Wow. And he says, "I'll keep the fake case. Here's your guitar,"
That's
nice.
Amazing.
That's professional.
We're at the part of the conversation where my wife's eyes glaze over talking about guitars.
I'd like to ask you a couple questions about the song Armageddon. I guess
go.
You probably heard our version of it, have you?
That, gentlemen, I have it on my notes right in front of me. I wanted to start this conversation by saying, you guys just blew everybody away. I can't thank you enough for doing that.
Wow.
If I'm in a position to say thank you. And not only was it a thrill and an honor, but you did it at the NAMM show, right?
Yeah.
And it was recorded. It was a video. And I didn't see it live, but I saw it 10 times afterwards. And I guess the day you did it, or the next day, my inbox and my incoming and my messages were just flooded. Really? And I said, you gotta see these guys, dude, they're just awesome, and they just did Armageddon. And so my incoming was absolutely jammed. I said, what's going on here? What is this? And then I went and saw it, man, and I just had it on heavy rotation. Like, I got to tell you, my eyes watered.
That's awesome.
And you guys just absolutely nailed. Well, you just took it over the top. I mean, you talk about energy and expertise. I mean, and the sheer muscle. You owned it. You just absolutely owned it. So I'm not worthy.
Well, that means a lot. Yeah.
Thanks
I mean, again,
so
it kind of feels like, in the same sense of you talking about being the curator of the band, we feel like in our own way we're curators of this music that we loved when we grew up in Canada. So stuff like Armageddon and a long list of other Prism songs are just a given that we should play. You know what I mean?
Thank you all.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just gushing. I'm just if you.
I wanted to ask about the whole symphony intro and how that came about and why
that's
it
got
came
a
about.
Fairbairn thing, huh?
Yeah, well, yes, and Lord rest his soul, Bruce Fairbairn. We actually cut that album twice. We keep going back to these studios, right? We did the whole album at Mushroom, and then Fairbairn said, "No, I'm not happy. We're going to do it again." So we went over to Little Mountain and did the whole thing again. The whole record, yeah. And different tracks came in and out. I still got the first version here. There were some tracks that didn't make it to the finals, but Yes, I think it was Bruce Fairbairn's idea to bring in the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra into Studio A there, and back in those days there was budgets for this kind of stuff. But also credit. Oh yeah, we didn't even look at the number. But Bruce Allen would say, "Don't worry about it. We're big. You know, okay, whatever you say. Can I pay my rent? Yeah, don't worry about it." But we and credit where credit is due, because that may have been Lindsay Mitchell's finest hour of songwriting. I mean, he wrote that song and he wrote "Night to Remember" on one tour that we were on.
Oh,
and
wow.
on the very first. The first anniversary of Elvis Presley's death, we were performing in Memphis.
That's right.
On the very anniversary. And I'll keep this as short as I can. But there was the police force, the police department were on strike at that time. And of course, can you imagine, it was like the faithful coming to Mecca. So there was like 30,000 people crowding Graceland, you know? And our current single in the charts down there at the time was one of my songs called "Flying."
Yeah.
And the record, thank you.
Flying.
It was when we did our album. When we did our album, it was between Armageddon and Flying.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we'll get to Flying eventually.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
It's an epic song. Yeah.
So the record company had they were running a contest, and it's, "Hey kids, enter the contest and come flying with Prism." So every single stop on that American tour, and we were down there for like 6 months, we'd arrive at whatever city, you know, Pittsburgh, whatever it is, right? Throw our suit hotel, and we had to get into a helicopter with the local kids that won the contest, right? And we did that every day. And I hate helicopters, man. I'm not good.
Yeah.
I'm white knuckle all the way. I'm hanging on saying, "Can we go home now?" with 4 or 5 kids, right? So we did that every single day. Come flying with Prism. Like, whose idea was that? Right? And so, sure enough, we get to Memphis on the anniversary of Elvis's death, and so not all of us would go, but I think Lindsay and I and Rocket might have been there. 2 or 3 of us went each time, you know. I got suckered into it every time, so I tried to hide and not go. So there we were. So Lindsay and I guess Rocket were in this helicopter, and we flew right over Graceland. And we're looking down at this, right? And so there's just literally 30,000, you know, housewives from Australia with "I Love Elvis" badges on, right?
Sure, yeah.
Coming to the shrine. And instead of having the police force, the National Guard had to come in and take over the policing of Memphis. Wow. And the whole city's going crazy because it's Elvis's anniversary, you know. And we're looking down at this. So we can see these little half-tap military tanks. We can see all these soldiers and all these Elvis fans. And for some reason, they were allowing our helicopter to circle around and around, right? And Lindsay had a little notepad. "Full moon over Memphis. National Guard outside. Thousands wait for Elvis. Waiting ever since he died." Lindsay just went, he just wrote it right there.
Wow.
And I just sat there and said, "Way to go, brother." You know, like,
that's great.
Yeah.
You know what's the craziest thing about our version of this, Al? Well, first of all, Corey constructed the entire intro, that whole symphonic part. He just built. Everybody thinks that, I don't know if everybody thinks it, but because it sounds so good that. Yeah. And then the funniest part is that there's all those pilot chatter, you know, going on, and we recorded the chatter. We recorded our own chatter. So it's my voice and Corey's voice and Brent's voice. We kind of made, like, thought we couldn't really fully make out exactly what they were saying. We just kind of made up what it kind of sounds like. So,
yeah, we kind of had to do it phonetically, right?
Yeah. It's like singing La Bamba.
Yeah.
Or Louie Louie or whatever.
Louie.
Yeah.
And so
we just kind of like literally
little parts of it, you know, like, what is he saying there? What's the pilot's, you know, like, tell us where the pilot chatter came from.
Yeah, you guys, that's amazing. Holy, hey,
that's Corey Churko's eye for detail, ear for detail there. He's like, "We got to do this." And I go, "Are you sure? Like, we're going to get that crazy about it?"
However, in the middle part where the pilot chatter comes back,
we
decided to do a little Easter egg, and we took pilot chatter from the $6 Million Man movie.
Oh,
Inserted that in the middle part.
That's right.
Everything at the start was exactly what you guys had. We had to recreate it, and Todd has the deepest voice, so he did that. The real General Toque that's down there.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it is, but yeah, it was really good.
That is so amazing, you guys. Well, the actual stuff that's on there.
Yeah, that stock stuff, whatever you guys found.
Rocket's girlfriend at the time, his fiancée at the time, who mysteriously disappeared after the band crashed. But her father, whose name now escapes me, was an Air Force guy, a Canadian Air Force guy. And he had gone on to fly 747s and all that kind of stuff. He worked for Air Canada at that time. And so we brought him in and said, what do you guys say when you're scrambling? And so he wrote out a two-part script, right? So he said this guy would say this and that guy would say that, so Bruce Fairbairn took his script into the vocal booth, and of course, as you can imagine, they EQ'd it so it sounds like it's coming over the squawk box, over the phone, right? And then our buddy, the actual Air Force guy, went into the other vocal booth, and they just read their script.
Oh, amazing!
And he said,
I figured it would have been a soundbite.
So it was real scrap.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Just some
You guys actually did it like a script. Essentially that's what we did as well. But I have a friend who's an admiral in the Canadian Air Force.
Okay.
And he actually said, what's going on there is legit.
Yeah.
Victor 2.537 and Mark 10.0 or whatever we're saying there.
Yeah.
He says it's all like it actually makes some sense.
Yeah, we had the real guy. And that, this is not an exercise. This is not an exercise. Yeah.
Who's
all that kind of stuff.
Who is that?
Yeah.
You know?
That's the guy?
Yeah, that was our friend. And so, wow. Yeah, so the other voice, so I think it's in stereo. I think it goes across the left, right. And so the other voice is Bruce Fairbairn.
Ah.
So
There's three voices, though, right? Three? Or
yeah, two? I think he said that you had to have another one. That there's another guy in the back, that would have been the pilot twice, the same guy twice. Okay. And then there's a lady that I was dating over the last few years, and her uncle Gordon Wilson, Uncle Gordon, was one of the commanders at NATO.
Oh, wow.
And he said, yeah, you guys got it right. That's the language. Yeah, he piloted a CF-100. He said, oh yeah, that's the way we talk.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So go for it.
We wanted to ask you about Long John Baldry, Al.
Oh, thank you.
I love Long John Baldry.
You know, I miss him like a friend. It's funny. It's not funny, but you know, when people remember Bruce Fairbairn and they remember Ron Tabak and Long John Baldry, and I get it. You know, like we're poorer for these great artists having left us, right? Mm-hmm. But when people start talking about this stuff, I usually get pretty quiet because I remember these guys as close friends. You know.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm missing a friend here, and my son is a big Baldry fan. Well, he's a big blues fan, jazz fan. Huh. But once in a while when we're having dinner, and he'll put on some Baldry, you know, and I reach for the Kleenex pretty quickly. But when I lived in England in the early '70s, excuse me, I can't quite remember how I met John, but talk about the perfect English gentleman, and the whole legend of how he helped Rod Stewart's career, you know, helped him get started, and Reg Dwight, Fat Reggie, right, as John called him.
Who went on to be Elton John, of course.
Yes, some of these guys went on and did pretty well. And and I like, Todd, what you said a while ago too. I'll come back to the topic, I promise. I wander, but I eventually come home. Was that with Prism, for example, it launched a lot of important careers. And as Rocket and I joke, you know, everybody that came out of Prism really went on to greatness, except the guys in the band. Like, we're still back in the trenches, you know. Yeah. So like, you know, Bruce Fairbairn, Bruce Allen, you know, everybody went on to Jim Valance, right?
Brian Adams.
And Brian Adams was very involved with us. Yeah. He wrote songs. We'd sit in the same room and write songs. Yeah.
Was it the second record, like "See Forever Eyes"? He came in.
Yes, and he wrote Well, there's a bunch of stuff on that album, and I think on Armageddon and Beyond, a song called Jealousy and Take It or Leave It, and then Don't Let Him Know, which Brian would later release on his own.
So
and, stuff like that.
Before he was signed then, right?
Yes, it was right in the
really young then.
The embryonic stage of, I think beside that disco track that he and Jim did, Let Me Take You Dancing, which he would rather we not mention that. But the songs on Armageddon, which I'm thinking specifically of Jealousy, were the first songs of his that ever got recorded. It was Prism that did them first, and he was in the room. He was doing the BG vocals, and he was always banging a tambourine or doing something on those records. But with John Baldry, of course, it was the same thing, right? He was such a generous guy,
right?
And so when I met John in London, and that's in his biography, the Paul Myers biography, and I don't think it made it to the TV documentary. They sort of cut my bit out of it, but in any case, he was cutting an album at that point called Good to Be Alive, which was coming right off the Everything Stops for Tea, right off the It Ain't Easy album. So it just went bang, bang, bang,
Right.
So, Ronnie Wood did some guitar on it, and a slide player named Sammy Mitchell, and Maggie Bell doing the backup vocals, and I was in the room. I was this kid from Canada with my Telecaster, waiting to get called that maybe they'll let me play, and so when I hear tracks off of that album, I get pretty misty pretty fast. But John was introducing me to what you and I would call rock royalty, because wherever he was, that was the center of attention. So I hung around the studio until they kicked me out, which they never did. But the summer of 1973, I was just based around Baldry's album, just watching it take shape. But every night we would go out and have a meal and go clubbing to the Speakeasy or the Bag of Nails and stuff, and that was just hilarious. I mean, and I guess it's safe to say all this now, and I think John would be okay with this. But in those days, I never knew that John was of the lavender persuasion. And one night, we would arrive at the Speakeasy or places like that. They would open the doors at 2:00 in the morning,
Right, yeah.
And the bands that were playing, man, like Gary Bolton and the Heavy Metal Kids, like just the incredible bands,
I bet.
And so I remember that all these drinks were arriving to our table, and so there's a bunch of us there. What was his name? Jimmy Horowitz, the producer, session player. We're all sitting there, and so somebody said, well, who's supplying all these drinks? And they said, well, it's that table over there. All those lovely available women are supplying the drinks. And so I thought, here's me. Really? Things were looking better and better. And then John slams his drink down and says, well, you can bloody well take them back and tell them we're not interested. And I thought, Periscope down.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think it was that same night. Sorry, this will all be in my book, but I guess that was, we had just lost Jimi Hendrix like a year and a half before, 2 years before, right?
Right, yeah.
And I remember one night, so this was a typical night for John Baldry in London, because he had his own TV show. He was a big star, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and I see this familiar-looking shadow staggering towards us, but he's not in very good shape. He's dodging the air molecules, and as he gets closer, here's me, because I'm just a kid. I'm just a fan, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's Noel Redding. That's the bass player from Jimi Hendrix Experience, right? And sure enough, he comes over to the table, and he tries to sit down, and he looks at Baldry and says, Baldry, you know anyone who needs a bass player? And John says, why, yes, at this table, we do need a bass player. Hey, gentlemen, we now have a bass player. Which is not what Noel wanted to hear, right?
No, yeah.
So it took him over the next 15 seconds, I heard this whomp, and I looked over and he was sleeping quite soundly with his head on the table. So that was the only meeting I ever had with Noel Redding, and God rest his soul now, too. But this would be like a day in the life of Long John Baldry. You know,
I can't imagine. Well, how long were you in England for?
I'm trying to remember now. I always ask Rocket about what, you know, as Groucho Marx said, whatever happened to me, you know. So Rocket would remember how long I was in England, you know.
Wow.
But I lived there for, it felt like a couple of years. Well, I think it was a bit less than that. But yeah, that was a trip, you know.
What an exciting time to go there, though, because this is just after, I mean, the British invasion was well underway. In the early 70s, things were really like crazy over there as far as the talent pool was just red hot.
Oh, yeah, and the culture was quite different. You know, the world is different.
It's like Austin Powers over there, I bet.
Oh, it really was. I remember, like, for a while, I lived in Hampstead Heath for a while. That'll be in the book too. But later, when I was down on my luck, I had to move to South London in a place called Balham, and I lived in the attic of this place. And on the second floor, there were these old World War II, I think they were World War I wrens, these old women who lived together, you know, they were old military chicks, right?
Wow.
And they would always steal the hot water. I could never have a bath because they, you know, I'd put a shilling in the meter and then the door would be locked, you know? And I remember that these old women would watch Top of the Pops every day.
No way.
And I could hear the conversation, and they'd say, "Oh, look at David! Isn't that lovely what he's wearing?" And I do love that song. What's it called? Changes. Oh, isn't that lovely? You know? So I mean, the whole culture was on the pop scene. You know? So Gary Glitter was big, and the Hudson Brothers and Mark Bolan was like serious competition to Bowie. Like Bowie had, you know, there was competition going on. But I remember when I pulled into London, it was at night, and somehow I wanted to see Piccadilly Square. I didn't even have a place to sleep, and I got my suitcase and I want to see Piccadilly Square. And I hope there's a photograph of this somewhere. But you know how when Elvis broke in New York and they pulled the canvas off that huge effigy in Times Square, that film footage.
Yeah.
I got into what did I just say? Leicester Square. I can't remember what I just said, but anyways,
Piccadilly, you said. Piccadilly.
Yeah.
Piccadilly Circus or
yeah, I'm losing it here, but I think it was Piccadilly Circus.
Okay.
And high on a building, there was this gigantic cardboard, or you know, an effigy, like a cutout of Bowie.
Wow.
And he's doing one of these bows, like ta-da, like he's throwing his hand down, and it just says, "Thanks, London," and he said, "Love on ya." And it was
around the Ziggy Stardust era.
Yeah, it was right around the time because he had the saxophone thing around his neck, and it was all done in shades of pink. It was a monochrome pink, and it was the same photo session from the Pinups album. You know, so I think Aladdin Sane and Pinups were the two current records. And here's this thing about 30 feet tall, and he just says, "Thanks, love you," you know.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, this would not happen in Vancouver, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But that was the culture. Like everybody, and they all buy in. You know, like the World War I vets. You know, the old soldiers. They all loved David. You know, so
sure.
I'd never seen anything like this. You know, and Long John Baldry was huge, and just all that kind of stuff. You know, and so you know, if Paul McCartney walked into the cigarette shop, nobody bugged him. You know, and so these, like at the Speakeasy, was full of these guys, you know.
I bet.
So
what was returning to Canada like after that experience? It must have been almost kind of a culture shock again, you know, like a.
Oh, it was, and it was it wasn't safe to go and drink in the local pubs here because the the guys across the way would say, "What the hell is that, Bob? I don't know. But you better give it a haircut. You know, we better beat that up, whatever that is. Are you a girl?" You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the same as the prairies where we grew up. I'm like 6'4", and I would get asked to dance by dudes who were like a foot shorter than me. I'm like, they thought I was a girl, and I'd be like, "Why would I want to dance with you?" My voice, they'd be like,
"Sorry, pal, this dance is taken."
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's really interesting. But at the same time, what a fervent time, you know, for Canada, because like Toque is essentially built around the concept of our love of all that music that you return to, because it suddenly seemed like at least from our vantage point, that everybody was in a band and everybody was in an awesome band, and there was a lot of great music. Like we touch on Loverboy or Streetheart or all these bands that you guys would have been crossing paths with the whole time must have just been like, and at the time, it seemed like Prism was sort of the ones that really kicked a giant door open for all of those guys in a lot of ways.
Well, thanks for saying that. And again, I'm a fan of what you're doing. I'm a fan of your band. And we looked at it that because BTO broke up and Randy and Fred moved out to Vancouver.
Right.
And they formed a band called Brave Belt. And that's the band that changed their name to BTO. And they wanted to live in Vancouver. And so Bruce Allen, our manager, was essentially more a booking agent than a manager. And then Randy said, look, the artist should never represent himself. He said, I need representation. And so he introduced Bruce to all the record company presidents, all that kind of stuff. And he said, I'll show you how to do this. I'll show you what to say and everything. Well, of course, Bruce the rest is history, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so we felt as though, so that changed Bruce's whole paradigm. And so we were already in the roster, And but so I think all of us came in on the coattails of BTO.
Sure,
And so Prism was kind of the next thing in line, and then Loverboy, we were all in the office at the same time, but Loverboy was the next in line after us, and then Bryan Adams was the next after Loverboy, you know what I mean? And Michael Bublé.
Interesting satellites around the Prism world, like guys like Bruce Allen. I just watched the David Foster documentary, and there's a lot of talk about Bruce in that as well. Yeah. And so like Bruce goes on to be Brian's manager and Lover, all these different, and he goes on to be massive. Bruce Fairbairn goes on to produce Aerosmith and everything else, and goes on. Jim Vallance writes songs for everybody. It's such a fascinating thing that such a fervent world of so much talent just exploding out of that. But I kind of always appreciate the fact that, you're the guy with the guitar and you're ready to go play on stage regardless of, whatever. It's like, and it's the same way I feel about music too, is it's kind of like, I don't really care. When I'm 80 years old, it's like, I'll still be playing music. It's not really about like Grammys and all that kind of stuff. That's nice and all that kind of stuff, but because you do have a Juno, right? You have a Juno from 1981, was it?
Yeah, we got two of them. Well, the funny thing was, in those days, the Juno was sort of the kiss of death. Like, there you go, we've rewarded you, now go away, And you know how they bring the Juno out, like the girl in the gown brings it out and hands it to you, and then you thank your mom and dad, and then you all walk off, right? Well, they snatch it out of your hands, they wipe off the fingerprints, and they run behind the curtain and give it to the next guy. So there's only one Juno going round and round. And so as long as you're still in a love relationship with your record company, then you get the Juno sent to they mail it to your house free, right? But the minute that the contract is about to expire, you don't get that one. So they still owe me one. So I think they're like $350 or something. And I just had this talk the other day with my son, and so I'm going to go buy them. So yeah, we got two of them. Yeah, one of them was for Armageddon, I think, and one was for the Group of the Year thing. So I got to get the other one.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's one of those things that I was lucky enough to be nominated once, but we didn't win it. But it's one of those things you have to have. You know what I mean? It'll look good with the in your museum you live in.
We'll put it on the resume. Yeah, I hide it. I think it's a doorstop over here somewhere. But
there you go.
We'll figure this thing out.
Perfect. So I guess I'm assuming, like everybody, your schedule is completely beaten up by this pandemic at the moment. So it's always nice to ask. So what do you got coming up? But I think it's really exciting that you have new music coming out. You're putting out archival music. You have a book coming out. That's actually really exciting to see you still moving forward, as opposed to just kind of like going through the motions to some degree. You know what I mean?
Well, you just have to keep moving, don't you? Yeah. I mean, I just moved in here just last year, so a lot of moving going on. I can't find half of this stuff right now, but yeah, the year was shaping up very nicely up till March.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and I'm sure you folks are feeling much the same too. Everything suddenly goes sideways. You're playing guitar in your living room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just kind of, as we all are, just going to stay active, whatever that looks like. You know, I mean, it's very humbling, isn't it? I mean, if we never get to play to thousands of people right in front of you again, you know, that's okay. You know, thank you, Lord, we're still here, and let's just do the doable. You know, like let's just do whatever that looks like. And I know you guys we're all the same breed of cat, right? Like we're not doing it with an ulterior motive. We're stuck with this. We're doing it because it's what we do. We're doing it doing it for love.
Lifers. We're all lifers that way. Yeah. So what is the plan with the book? What's the plan? Like, do you have a release plan for that? I mean, I'm excited to read that.
Well, thank you. There's a couple of publishers that are saying that they'll take it, and you know, I'm told by the publishers that the optimum length is 280 pages or something like that. They'll if it's really good, they'll go you 325. So I have to scale it down from the journal of 550 I got right now. You know, that kind of stuff. So it's editing down. You know,
that sounds incredibly tough to meet that number. I know, because it's like, how do you take out that story and this story?
Yeah.
And well, like, you know, it's just editing out entire chapters of your life down to 280 words that seems really weird.
And somebody said to me, because I guess there's a fair amount of embellishment in some of these books, you know, and so somebody said to me about a month ago, well, are you going to embellish? And I had to look the word up in the dictionary. I said, no. As a matter of fact, I'll have to get permission from some people, and there'll be stuff I have to leave out. No, we do not have to embellish this story at all.
No. I think that makes it the best, though, because I think that, you know, I think people want to hear the real deal, you know what I mean? And I know I do. And I buy almost every single rock biography that comes out, even if I'm kind of like, I'm vaguely aware of this person, I'd like to read it because I find the stories interesting, you know. And I think that'll be, I mean, Rocket, I just got a copy of Rocket's book, you know, the Rocket from Prism, and I'm very curious to read that. So I'm excited to see it. And then it's always good to hear your perspective too, because I'm sure you guys remember things differently, just as when people tell stories, it's like, you know, Corey could tell a story of how we met, and I'll be like, and then my version will be somewhat similar, but have different sort of, different tone to it.
The selective memory, yes.
Exactly.
And 2 nights ago, Rocket and I exchanged emails, and there's one device. They say, if you're going to write your biography, don't make it sound like a letter home from summer camp. Like, this happened, and then that happened, and then I gradually got older, and that happened. So you have to you have to skillfully jump the timeline, and you got to do it well, right? You got to, you know, there's a way to. But one device that I really want to engage here, and Rocket gave me his permission to do this, is I became pretty good friends with Andrew Lou Oldham of the Stones manager, and he was living in Vancouver, and we got pretty chummy right around the time that his books were coming out. And I talked to him about this, and he's very self-effacing. I had him guest lecture when I was teaching at Cap University here, and you know, he's telling his story. You know, then we were here, then we were there, and you know, we
I have
recorded.
this picture right here.
Oh, right, man.
That's Andrew Lou Goldman right there.
There's Andrew. He's in the band.
Yeah, he's enjoying a coffee with me. But go ahead.
And so Andrew said, so at the end of the lecture that he did at the university, all of a sudden we're taking questions from the crowd now. It's Q&A time, right? And so all of a sudden you get this, gee, you know, you produced the Rolling Stones, you produced Satisfaction, and you know, all those big records. Like, why did you leave? And Andrew says, I didn't leave. I was fired. Next. You know, so he has no ego at all about this. He's really self-effacing. So in his book, Stoned, it's called, and he'll say, okay, so there we were in Sweden on tour with the Stones in 1966, and this happened and that happened, and they burned down the hotel or something like that. And then he'll allow somebody to give a different version. So you'll have this indented paragraph, and it's so-and-so, like Charlie Watts or somebody will say, no, Andrew has it all wrong. That's not what happened.
Wow.
You know, he's full of crap. Here's what really happened. And then Andrew will just put that in his book, and he won't challenge it. He'll just move on to a different topic. And I thought, aha. So I'm going to make sure that I do that. So I'm saying to Rocket now, hey, Rock, remember we were in Louisville, and that happened, and all this craziness took, you know, whatever it was, you know. And I'll say, here's my version. And you'll say, no, Al, you got it wrong. Okay, good. So I want you to say that in my book.
that's a great take, because I think it's interesting when you read a rock band's biography, if you're getting different, anybody who was there, the crew guy or the guitar tech or the band or whatever, everybody's take on it is a totally different, no, that's not what he said. He said this, and then that happened. That's just the way it goes. Yeah.
Oh, and it's all about the author, right? Like
Exactly.
apparently Paul Revere and the Raiders have a box set, and they interview everybody. So they must have done these interviews back when Mark Lindsay was around, right? And everybody says, yes, I formed the band in 1963. I taught those guys how to play their instruments. Isn't it amazing what they learned from me? And each guy says the same thing.
Yeah, that's the way it works. It's kind of like George Martin talking about when the Beatles would come in and hear the mixes and be like, all their suggestions were fairly egocentric. Like, you can't help but go, I can't hear the part that I played, or can you turn up what my instrument or whatever it is. And that's very common in all bands. The drummer comes in and goes, that snare drum's too low or whatever. And you go, and then the bass player comes in and goes, I need more bass on this. It's just very, very normal.
Yeah. So what we should do, guys, we should get the T-shirt that says "More me in the mix."
Yep, I think so. Guys like Corey who have to deal with, Corey records bands all the time and artists all the time, so he probably has to deal with that stuff all day long. I couldn't possibly put up with it myself. I'd be like, oh.
Right.
Producing records is 50% psychology.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So grab the fader when the guy's telling you to turn it up.
Yeah.
Don't move it at all. Say, how's that? Oh, that's way better.
Yeah.
Totally.
Or you have that sort of phantom board over there that doesn't do anything, and you just go, hey, I'm turning it on now.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Actually, I did work with a very, very successful mix engineer, Mike Shipley.
Oh, yes.
And he, so I was his Pro Tools guy, and he would have big clients come in, and he would always have the assistant engineer patch all these dead patches to external gear, so the lights would flash, but nothing was coming out of it.
Beautiful.
Just to show them, like, look how much time I'm spending on your mix.
Genius. That's genius.
Yeah, bring in every rack mount thing you can find.
There was even some rack mount gear that you could buy that was just a faceplate and a light.
Are you serious?
And he would say, yeah, I've got it going through this new thing. No one's got it. It's like a prototype.
Oh, my.
And it would have no circuitry in behind it. It was just a light and a faceplate.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
It's basically like a Star Trek set or something. This is
yeah, my world-class studio, brother.
Yeah. Well, we probably shouldn't keep it too much longer, but
So all that stuff's ready to go, and if the book doesn't get banned or something, hopefully that'll be just one.
So where was the new one? Where did you record the new stuff?
Most of it was done, excuse me, in a studio in New Westminster here called Alchemy Studios.
Okay. Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
And the cat that owns it, Scott Young is his name, and he's talk about Bruce Fairbairn. Scott Young is just a wizard. He's a killer drummer. He's a great bass player. Although it was so he produced it and engineered it,
right.
And it was co-produced by Kevin Stewart Swain, who plays bass on it and some guitar. So those guys both played guitar on it, and so this Alchemy Studios it reminds me of Mushroom, in that don't you love those studios where you got lots of old gear and new gear,
Yeah.
So there's like 24-track Ampex machines and Scully sitting over there. And, vintage Blondie Fender amps and just everything you want, right? So we just had way too much fun, which is why it took us way too long. But then it was, most of it was mixed there, but we had Mike Fraser mix it over at the Armory. He did one track, and John Webster mixed one track. So it was a bit of a patchwork in the mixing, but you know what it's like. You just start having way too much fun And,
of course, yeah. If it's not fun, you probably shouldn't be doing it, I suppose, right?
Oh, no, I was just happy to show up and, just bring in the pizza and keep going. And we brought in some friends, too, like Sean Verole of Wide Mouth Mason.
Oh, yeah.
We got him
to... monster guitar player.
Here's the funny thing, man. I only met him once.
Really?
And it was at the end of one of his gigs. And if you've ever seen him play,
it's nuts, yeah.
And I couldn't share the stage with that guy, man. I mean, so he's got the metal finger picks on this side, and he's got the cymbals on this side.
Yeah, and he plays slide with like all 4 fingers or 5 fingers. Bananas.
He's doing this, right?
Yeah,
and bananas. So one night I saw him play, and I walked up to him with my jaw down in my collarbone, and I said, "Brother, would you ever consider playing on my album?" And he I guess he knew who I was. He says, "Yeah, man, sure, okay, call me," and turned and walked away. So that's my only face-to-face with the guy ever. So 2 years later, I called him, and I said, "Well, I got a track for you." And no, I didn't. I emailed him, and he said, "Yeah, send it over. Just send a WAV file, whatever." So I sent him the track, and then so I phoned Kevin and Scott at Alchemy. And I said, I got him. And I said, "Oh, what should we do? Well, we'll bring in a bunch of amps, and we'll bring in whatever he wants. And, does he like sushi? We'll cater the thing. And we'll get some mood lighting in there, and we'll send a limo. We're going to get shown." Yeah. Anyway, as this is happening, I hear a ding, and here comes my Dropbox. This is like 12 hours later, and there's these tracks, man.
Wow.
And I'm listening, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's like Jeff Beck. If Jeff Beck played more slide,
right,
this is it.
Right.
And I said to him, "Well, Sean, it's an F sharp minor, and it's a real dark, dirgy kind of spiritual song, man. Like it's not a happy dance track. Like, can you have a collision with yourself? I would like two insane guitar players who have not taken their meds, and they're out." They're out at the graveyard doing really bad things on slide guitar. Would you mind doing that?" And he goes, "You got it." And so we put up his tracks, and I got to play the track for you, man. But these angry slide guitars are not getting along very well.
I love it.
And when it comes time to play it live, I don't know where I'm going to be because I can't do what he did. But I'm very happy that he did it.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, it's always great to get guys like that. We've known Sean's a Saskatchewan guy too, so I've known him for years. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited for all this stuff. All this sounds like 2021 is going to be a big year for you.
Well, and hopefully, gentlemen, for you too. Now, can I join your band?
Why not? Come on board. Yeah,
I'm absolutely in. Drop of a hat. Well, we got to keep this conversation going, man. Because
absolutely. Well, let's swap info somewhere. Who's your contact here? Did you get a hold of Al, Corey? There you go.
There's the guilty party right there.
There we go.
Hey, Al, we'll chime in quick because we've been pretty silent here this whole conversation, not because of any other reason than I guess we had what I told you earlier. We're sharing a feed here, so we were creating quite an audio loop, so we kind of just sat back and enjoyed the show. But somebody was asking if you had a car of choice for the summer and whether or not you wanted to share that with us because apparently you have plenty to choose from.
Well. Thank you. Speaking of another disease, cars and guitars, right? So, we got a modest collection here, but when we moved into the place didn't have a garage. And so my son is the master mechanic, and he has his own tastes. So what we've got here right now, so what I want to do to help sort of stay visible and not just fade away, I got a video series coming up called Cars and Guitars. So you can imagine where that's going to go, right?
Cool.
And so the newest edition out there, I'm trying to look out the window here, I had to build a shop for my son with a welding system in it. And so we got the hydraulic lifts and stuff. So we stack the cars up and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know anything about it. I just say, tell me when everything's fixed so I can turn the key and go for a ride, So Steve Harlow is my mechanical genius. He's also an industrial designer, so thank the good Lord that I've got Steve for a son. So he puts the cars up in the hoist and stuff. So he's building 2 hot rods right now. He's building a 49 Ford truck, and he just inherited a 66 Dodge Polaris station wagon. But we have a Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow 2, which is that's Dad's car. They're going to bury me in that one. we got a couple of Jaguars out there. We got a as Jay Leno says, a couple of the cars are restored, but if you can get original unrestored, but it still looks showroom, so they're essentially just show cars. They just come out in the sunshine and go to the larger shows. So he's got a Jaguar. My son has a Jaguar vintage XJ6, which wins concours type trophies at international shows. So that stays in his care. And then we got another X-type Jaguar. And what else? Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot. The one for this summer. That was the question, wasn't it?
Yes.
The car for this summer, I just got my hands on now this is a restored car. It's not original, but it's newly restored. It's all done. It's like, because I don't know how to do anything. I just turn the key and go. But it's a 1955 Thunderbird, which is the first year.
Wow.
For the Thunderbird. And so, yeah, and it's like guitars and bands. Like the backstory is everything, right?
Of course,
so this car was ordered from the factory in 1955 by the star pitcher for the Oakland A's baseball team.
Wow.
And so I want to trace all that, I want to get the paperwork and all that. And
so
so it turns out that I'm the third owner. He bought it for his wife and she didn't want it. And then somebody else bought it. And then the 87-year-old guy that I bought it from was the third owner.
Wow.
No, I'm the second. I'm the third owner.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so we call it the car with no roof. So the 1955 was so everybody says, oh yeah, the little baby T-Bird with the porthole and the Continental spare on the bumper. And I said,
Right.
no, sorry, that was 56, because the first people who bought the 55 T-Bird, they complained that the spare tire took up the entire trunk, and when the roof was up, you couldn't see out the side. And so
Right.
Ford panicked, and they put in the portholes and they put the spare tire on the back bumper.
Wow.
That was damage control. So I've got the earlier one. So it looks like the same car, but yeah, the little two-seater T-Bird with a 292 Y-block V8. So it just rumbles down the highway up here. So yeah, you can catch me going up and down the coast road here. So that's all I'm good for these days.
That sounds like fun to me.
And when it rains out, I take out the Rolls Royce. So
Good for you. Wow.
Predictable. But John Fluvog just moved up here. Of Fluvog shoes.
Sure.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
And he's a car. Well, there's lots of car guys up here.
Sure.
But he's got the disease worse than me. He's bringing his collection up right now. So we're comparing.
He's in the music biz as well. John has a studio of some sort, if I understand. So you might want to make some connection there and in that as well. Yeah, he's pretty around as far as the music business goes, as far as I know.
Well, thank you. I'll tell him Todd sent me this.
Please do. Yeah.
Well, this is so cool, and thank you for asking that. Yeah, the big passion around here is the automobiles, and
That's
coming
amazing.
and going. So yeah, summertime is the time when the birds and the bathing suits, the girls come out in their frock dresses, and the cars come out, right?
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, Al. Again, we want to thank you for joining us today and spending some time with us. Everybody, we had some audio issues. We'll straighten that out. I mean, we had to share something, so we were a little quiet today. But I don't know if everybody noticed on there too. We're you send some stars our way. We appreciate it. If you enjoy the show and you enjoy what we're talking about, feel free to do that. Help turn Brent's cable back on, and we can get back to Other than that, we'll see you. Yeah, exactly. We're going to go find that out right now. So I apologize for some of the audio loops, but it's tough to chime in when we're hearing such great stories. So all the best, and we'll see everybody next Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Al.
Well, gentlemen, thank you, and I'll be watching with great interest as to your next moves, and I really hope we can keep in touch here.
Thanks, Al. Let's swap info for sure. And by the way, you're in Winnipeg. It's called Supper.
Supper, okay, yes.
But I love that he said garage.
Yeah.
Yes,
correct.
that's correct. Yes,
That's the
yeah.
Canadian.
We'll have supper in the garage.
We're going to eat off TV trays out of the Chesterfield.
Yes.
On the Chesterfield.
All right, guys. Have a good week. We'll talk soon, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.